Hey everyone, Brendan Sander here. How are you? Thanks so much for joining me and welcome to a run through of my UFO CD collection. The band formed in '68, very famous for the members that came through, the lone constant being Phil Mogg in there. So a lot of different lineups, a lot of cool things, 22 studio albums in all. Unfortunately though, the band called it a day in 2022, 54 years on from when they started. As I mentioned, the 22 studio albums, but I've got 46 albums in my collection to run through with you guys. We're going to get into it here in just a bit, do a full run through of all these great albums, maybe turn you on to something you didn't know was out there. That's the hope, at least. But if you haven't already subscribed to my channel, please do. Leave a comment, hit like, all those things do help. I greatly appreciate it. And don't forget to turn on notifications so you don't miss anything and you stay up to date on cool things like this, where I'm running through my UFO CD collection with you guys. So we're going to start right at the beginning. I try to do it chronologically, not so much from when the album got released, because obviously there's a lot of archival stuff that drops later on, but when the stuff was recorded. So I've organized my CDs like that. I'm going to run through those with you. And we're going to kick off with their 1970 debut, UFO 1. This lineup here, of course, we still got Phil Mogg in there, and we've got Pete Way, big names, but we got Mick Bolton on guitar. Bernie Marsden would come in, famed for having been with White Snake towards the end of this lineup. But before we got Michael Schenker on guitar, we had a different lineup. So we got this album, and definitely in that space rock theme. I think that's where the whole UFO comes from. They put out UFO 2, their second studio album, called Flying, in 1971. And then they followed that up with a live album simply called Live, 6 tracks on this. So 3 official things like that from that early lineup of the group. But of course, it would be the all-time classic Phenomenon from 1974 in the classic lineup, because Michael Schenker has been added at this point, having come over from the Scorpions. We still got Pete Way, Phil Mogg, and who do we got as a drummer in here? Is this Andy Parker? It is Andy Parker on drums. So great album, absolute classic with Dr. Doctor, Rock Bottom on here. Just so many good tracks. I always like the song Space Child. Now, there is a 3 CD deluxe edition that I added to my collection. These chrysalis reissues that are remastered that have bonus tracks on them are very cool. If you can track these down, I don't know that they're in print any longer. This one is a 2007. I don't know if they were all dropped at the same time, but it's got 6 bonus tracks on it. But these are now coming out, these which are also chrysalis. This one here in particular is 2019, but I've seen a new one dropping at least every year. A couple more have come out since this one here. 3 CDs, you get the album itself, the 10 tracks, then you get a bonus disc with demos, non-album A-side and B-side singles, some edits, instrumental, and then some alternate versions, 16 tracks on that. CD 3 is a live show from '74, 8 tracks on that. It's got a cool slipcase on it. So those are definitely worth checking out. All right, then Force It 1975. I always really like this album cover, but also the title. It's got all these faucets, but the title is Force It. Again, we got that chrysalis reissue, remaster. The date on it is 2007, so it looks like these might have all come out at the same time. Again, we got 6 bonus tracks on here. Previously unreleased studio track called A Million Miles, and then a bunch of live stuff on it. But really enjoyed that about the band, getting all this extra bonus content from the studio, the vault, so to speak. Next up, No Heavy Petting, which came out in 1976, the year I was born. So this one here, we get 5 bonus tracks on here, and we get, 5 unreleased studio tracks. All or Nothing, French Kisses, Have You Seen Me Lately, Joan, Do It If I Can, and All the Strings, which makes this even better because you get the 9 songs that were the studio album, and then you add 5 more studio songs. It ends up just sounding like it's all right from the same time frame. When these things jump to alternate versions and live stuff at the end of the album. Sometimes that throws the flow off for me. But that's cool like that. Haven't looked at these in a while, so I'd kind of forgotten what was the bonus stuff on some of these. Next album, Lights Out, 1977, a classic album if ever there was one. Too Hot to Handle kicks this thing off, the Lights Out title track on it. We get 4 songs recorded live at the Roundhouse in London in 76 that are previously unreleased. And then we get Obsession in 78, Only You Can Rock Me off of this one here. We get 3 bonus tracks on this one. These are also live recordings. All right, but now the all-time classic, Strangers in the Night live album. And yeah, we know some of the stuff has the overdubs on it, so it's got studio tinkering or trickery on it, which is one of the reasons guitar player Michael Schenker decided he didn't want to be in the band, because he didn't want to do overdubs on it, and so he split from the group. I think he returned briefly when they were out on the road, but then ultimately left again. He'll return later, of course, and we'll get to that when we get to it. But this album here has some bonus tracks, Hot and Ready and Cherry. And if I remember correctly, this restored a couple songs in the running order, 15 tracks on it, but that is not the original of it. And so they did release an 8 CD box set. Very cool the way this is done here. All the discs are in here, but this has the original way that this is done, like a 2 CD setup, because there was originally 2 LPs. So they replicate the original LP that came out at the time and actually split the song. So you got to take it out just like somebody flipping a vinyl. Then you get the shows that were used to make it up, and they're unedited. They do not have any overdubs on them. And so that is CDs 3 through 8 in here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 shows were used to make that up. But they not only restore the album, which is different than this one here, because this one here has the stuff added into it. So I kept this in my collection, even though I have this 8 CD box. And you guys have probably heard me, if you watch my channel enough, you know I always say I'm not a big live album fan. Doesn't mean I don't like live albums, but I have to say that this was very cool to hear. Just like if you guys are paying attention to what's going on right now, Kiss just announced a deluxe edition of their classic album Alive, another big time live album, one of the hallmark albums that everybody talks about, the way that people talk about Stranger in the Night. So those are turning out to be just as interesting to hear, those albums that are unedited that make it up the same way I was just talking about this box set here. If you can track this down and you're a fan of UFO, I definitely recommend it. All right, now unfortunately, Michael Schenker leaves the group, and we get coming in for him, Paul Chapman. It took me a second to remember his name. No Place to Run, the kickoff album from it, 1980, and probably just because it was on the heels of Strangers in the Night, that album did really well for the band, and it just showed that UFO was much more than any one member. And I'm glad, because that probably kept Phil Mogg, the frontman, going with all the different lineups that he has done throughout the years. So this is a recent thing that the band had been digging into the vault, releasing archival live albums. But this one here, Lights Out in Chicago from 1980, which is from the tour of this album here, No Place to Run. I haven't cracked into this one just yet. I picked it up at the time of release because these things go so quickly, but great sound quality. Those are on Cleopatra Records. You're going to see a number of them, one after the other here in just a bit. The Wild, the Willing, the Innocent, 1981. Again, Chrysalis reissue, remaster edition. We got 3 bonus tracks on that one. And we've got the accompanying Making Moves in Chicago tour, 1981, 13 tracks on it. I just really enjoy the artwork that's coming out on these archival releases. So you get a little write-up on the insides of these things, some cool photos and stuff like that. But they've all turned out to be really good stuff. And certainly from this era of the band, I like the Paul Chapman era. I like the post-Schenker era of the group. Speaking of Mechanics, which came out in 1982, we get 4 bonus tracks added onto this copy here, and then we get that Cleopatra archival release of live material, Landing in St. Louis, live 1982, 12 tracks on this one. All very cool stuff in my opinion, but I was glad. They were dropping these every few months. I don't know if it was, I don't think it was last year, 2023 it says on these. So 2023, it was just like, man, once a month I was getting some new live UFO and really enjoying it. Next up, we got my favorite album, Making Contact from 1983, Blinded by a Lie, Diesel in the Dust. Love these tracks. 3 bonus tracks on this one, Everybody Knows, which was a B-side, and 2 live tracks on it. Always also enjoyed the album art, the sort of art that kind of makes you think what the heck is going on here, but I do enjoy that. The particular artist, don't know if that is a Hypnosis or Storm Thurgeson, but either way, the art that those guys do and the stuff that is resembles that is also very good. So unfortunately, I think the band decides to break up at this point, albeit briefly, and we get Headstone. Now this is the live album from Headstone. There was 2 LP set at the time that had selection of their tracks, I guess their hits at the time, later day era stuff, and then it also had some live stuff. And this is just the live stuff, and it's been, this is the full complete show. They kept the name Headstone on it. I kind of wish they had just changed it and called it Live at Hammersmith 83 so that you can buy that Headstone album, which is really different. It's studio and live material. But this is from the Making Contact tour, and so very good. It's actually what kicked me off and buying all of those Cleopatra archival releases, live releases, because I was enjoying this so much and it sounded so good and it was so much more powerful than the studio album versions that I just needed more of that sort of stuff. So while this came out years later, I don't see the year release on the back side of it, or just too hard to read at least, but there is a UFO best of. I have this one here. It's Chrysalis Records version, and it is all the remastered tracks. You know, it's probably 2007. So it's best of UFO 1974 up to 83. Again, the Chrysalis Records era of the band. 19 tracks on it. And it's cool too because some of these are 7-inch versions. Some of these are edits of the 7-inch versions. So different stuff that's not on the full-length CD, and I think that makes it worthwhile having as well. And while this one not specifically related to that, it is related to the original best of or greatest hits that was out from UFO. They put this out called The Best of the Rest, and again focusing on that later era with Paul Chapman on guitar. And so this has 17 tracks on it. It's the lesser known stuff. And I really like that. I know all the stuff that's the Michael Shankar era inside and out like most people do. So when I want something that is a collection that's not all the big stuff that gets played on the radio, that's when you can reach for that. And that's a Chrysalis Records release from 88 that's long out of print. It was actually hard to track that down at the time when I got it. They've put out some other cool archival things like this. Hot and Live. It's the Chrysalis Live Anthology 74 to 83. It is a 2-disc set, and it's got stuff from 3 tracks from 74, 2 from 75, 4 from 76, and it just goes on like that through it. So disc 1, though, is Michael Shankar years 74 to 78, and disc 2, the Paul Chapman years 1980 to 83. Bunch of this stuff unreleased. Recordings making their debut here, but also very worthwhile in checking out. And then Misdemeanor. So taking over for Paul Chapman was Atomic Tommy M. So we get him starting to record on this stuff that's here. Very cool album of material, but very much the 1980s. So 1985, I think that is. And the accompanying archival live release, live at the Oxford Apollo in 85. 10 tracks from it. They just recently did a reissue of this in the UK that has those 10 tracks plus a DVD of the show itself. This adds on 2 bonus tracks, which I like. It has Too Hot to Handle and Lights Out, which were not part of the original show release. So very, very good stuff. Love that live album. You know, out of all the live albums I've got from Cleopatra, this one I probably like the most because the material on here is very 80s, very keyboard, synthesizer, melodic, but the production wasn't very good. It sort of accentuated that. The live stuff beefs it up. It makes it really, really, rock the way that I think that it should have. What's also cool is that the second track on here, The Chase, was a B-side. It's not on the album itself. It's on this remastered reissue of it, but they perform it live in concert. So how cool is that to get that? And it's the second track of the show. All right, so here's another Chrysalis thing, and it was UFO at the BBC, live on air. I think a number of the recordings from this is what makes up this here, meaning this being a 2 CD selection of from that, albeit there was previously unreleased stuff that's not on this. So this has full concerts of stuff from 74, 75, 77. When I say full, I mean the full BBC performances are on here. But some of them are entire live concerts. In Concert 1980 is a 12-track show. There's one from 82, 11 tracks, 85, 8 tracks. And then there is a DVD included in here as well. So a lot of cool stuff. And it's a, lift top style or clamshell, I think they call it, box like this with the CDs in the paper sleeves. All right, we continue on. We still got Atomic Tommy M playing guitar. Ain't Misbehavin' is the album. It was only 7 tracks. I think they kind of refer to it as a mini album, but it is counted as an album in their discography now. Whether or not it was really considered to be a full-length album or just a mini album with only 7 tracks, but this recently, a lot of these getting reissued. This one here is on FM Records, the original label, which is a small label that long since went out of print. But I think it's Cleopatra that recently redid this with new artwork, far better than this anyway. So that is out there if you want to check that out. That is this, of the 2 that Atomic Tommy M did, this one here being my favorite. They definitely got back to the hard rock on that album. And then we get Lawrence Archer coming in on guitar for High Stakes and Dangerous Men. 12 tracks on this. This was 1995. And it's, I don't know what year. Actually, let's see. This was 1992. So it's 1995 for us in the US when we got it. And that's going to play into the follow-up studio album after this. Everything is thrown off in the US by a few years. Just record label problems and not getting US distribution. So for me, that was a 1995 album. But I know that by 93, the original lineup, or the big lineup, the classic lineup, I should say, of UFO had reformed with Michael Schenker in tow. And they had already recorded and releasing an album in 1995, but we don't get it for a few more years. So in between that, there is Lights Out in Tokyo, a live album that features Lawrence Archer. So these 2 things went hand in hand. This is an archival release on Castle Communications, and it says it was recorded in 1992. And then, as I mentioned, so I've got an archival live recording called Lights Out in Babenhausen. That must be a German show. 1993, and just looking at the back. Yep, in Germany. December 16th, 1993, 15 tracks, and it is the reunion era with the classic lineup. And then 1998 for us in the US, but 1995, a studio album with your classic lineup of the guys. Self-Made Man, Venus, Push to the Limit, Stop by a Bullet, all those songs, so very good. There's 2 new versions of Dr. Doctor and Lights Out on here, reunion era recording of that. CMC International put it out in the States in 1998. But as I said, everything thrown off for a few years. Now, from that tour in 1995, California at the Edge, 1995, 14 tracks as part of this one here. In fact, open that back up. You can see a picture of those two guys. Oh, actually, you know what? I was like, wait, where's everyone else? That's because I got to take the CD out for you guys. There you go. That's reunion era of the guys. But yeah, if you haven't checked out these Cleopatra Records archival releases, they're just very, very good. All right, so now catching up, Covenant in 2000, and you know, Michael Schenker was in and out and in. He was in 93, he's out of the band, he's back in 95, he's out of the band again, comes back in 2000, and they do this album, which is a great album, but it's starting to just kind of be lackluster performances, in my opinion. It didn't seem like Michael Schenker really wanted to be part of these, and just kind of seemed to be going through the motions. So I liked him at the time, but they don't really hold up, in my opinion. This had a 7-song live album bonus disc added into it at the time. So a 2 CD set when that came out on Shrapnel Records. And then also on Shrapnel was Sharks. I believe this is 2002. Yep. And again, we still have Michael Schenker, but the last time he's grown a beard, he's looking like a homeless man. So 11 tracks. Good stuff again, still like it, but I think the band really started to come back when they brought in Vinnie Moore, which is what they do for the You Are Here album. And no, that's not the right album cover, right? I have a promo copy of this. There's your album cover. Let's see if this one has one of those on the inside, because a lot of times it's the reason I keep them. Yes. So there is like a sort of press kit explanation of stuff on the inside. And even though I don't get the album art with it, it's in one of those slimline jewel cases. I have a hard time getting rid of that because I really enjoyed getting that at the time. But this is how the SPV label was releasing things at that time, which is a little bit of a bummer. So had the track listing and everything, but I do have that. And so that's the first album with Vinnie Moore on guitar. It's got Jason Bonham playing on it. I'm just looking here. So that was 2004, 2 years after the 2002 ending with Michael Schenker. So we do get a live album from that lineup that featured Jason Bonham on drums. Showtime, this has recently been reissued as well. This was recorded in Germany also, 2005. But on the DVD of that, when it came, there was an extra thing called the Hanover Sessions. And it was 6 songs performed live in the studio. And I always thought it was so cool because of the power of it. And I was really bummed that it wasn't part of this. And recently, though, they did reissue, calling it just the Hanover Sessions. And you get those 6 tracks. And then they add on 4 more bonus tracks of live performances. Or are they live? No, I think it's actually studio material from first couple albums. So When Daylight When Daylight Goes to Town, Goodbye You, Hell Driver, and Fight Night are added in on this, which they could have left off easily, in my opinion. I didn't need any of that. But the live stuff, the 2005, it was recorded May 26th of 2005, live in the studio. Pack It Up and Go, Try Me, Love to Love, Slipping Away, Cherry, and Profession of Violence. That's also the Cleopatra Records label that did that. All right, Monkey Puzzle, their next album, 2006. This is, again, one of those SPV ones that has the information on the inside of that. But they finally put the album cover on it. So never had a problem with that one because at least I got the album art. So still have Vinnie Moore in the lineup, and we have him for the next one here, The Visitor. In fact, Vinnie Moore stays until the end. 2009. This album here, for whatever reason, leaned heavily on the blues rock side of things. And I felt it was far too bluesy for my taste. I enjoyed it, but it's not an album I return to all that often. So there was that one. And then we got Best of a Decade. So featuring the Phil Mogg, Vinnie Moore, Andy Parker, Paul Raymond lineup of stuff. 16 tracks on here covering those 3 albums that I just talked about studio-wise, and having live material probably from Showtime on here as well. So yeah, if you wanted some of that later stuff, you really like the Vinnie Moore era of the band, then you know, it's cool to get that and have that and be able to pop that on. Seven Deadly, the next album, I felt like they were making a good comeback here with more of that straight ahead rock like Fright Night. So this was 2009. I do have a deluxe edition of it where there's 2 bonus tracks added on. That's in a digipack, but I like my jewel case, so I actually do have 2 versions of that. I just didn't go grab that, just remembering it now that that's put away, but I do have that. And actually one of my favorite, maybe my all-time favorite album of the Vinnie Moore era, A Conspiracy of Stars from the band. Really, really like this album. Kicking off with The Killing Kind and Run Boy Run and Ballad of the Left-Hand Gun. Those 3 songs kicking off this album are just powerful stuff. I believe this is the first album that Rob DeLuca joins on bass to play for these guys, him coming from Spread Eagle. But this lineup, Phil Mogg, Vinnie Moore, Andy Parker, Rob DeLuca taking over for Pete Way, and then Paul Raymond on keyboards. Really good last album of original material from these guys. And then we did get in 2017 what would become their final studio album, the Salentino Cuts, which is all cover songs. We get Heart Full of Soul, Break On Through from The Doors, River of Deceit from Mad Season. Surprised to get that on here. The Pusher, Rock Candy from Montrose, Mississippi Queen from Mountain. A lot of good stuff on here. Not really the style of UFO, so it's interesting, but it kind of doesn't go with what you would expect from UFO. So I enjoy the album, but it is very different. And unfortunate just to be the final album, and they didn't do one last good studio album. But, you know, pandemic happened, Phil got sick, they were set to do a tour in 2022, and it got canceled. And then ultimately Phil Mogg decided to it was time to retire the band. Now, I also want to show you these next 4 albums that are not UFO, but in my opinion, they are, because Phil Mogg was the sole member, original guy to run through all the different lineups. So I always sort of felt like just about any project he did was that. And there were 2 albums that were made at the time where they didn't have the rights to the UFO name because they had reformed with Michael Schenker, so they couldn't call it UFO. And they did Mogg Way. So Phil Mogg, Pete Way, with other guys joining in. We get Ansley Dunbar on drums, who drummed for UFO, and then George Bellis on guitar does a phenomenal job. This album here, absolutely outstanding and better, in my opinion, than anything that was done with that reunion era of Schenker. And then Mogg Way makes a second album called Chocolate Box. And so we still have Phil Mogg and Pete Way, but now we get Simon Wright on drums from AC/DC, Jeff Coleman on guitar, and Paul Raymond joins. So 3 UFO guys on here, in my opinion. Mogg Way is UFO, and I know that they just couldn't use the name. This was between 95 and 2000 when Michael Schenker would rejoin. So in my opinion, these should have been UFO albums that just couldn't use the name. So that's why I wanted to show you. And then since I believe this album, I want to say it was 2002, before the UFO was reformed with Vinnie Moore, Sign of 4, which I believe this album has now been reissued under the name Phil Mogg, Sign of 4, but it was a band, and it featured Jeff Coleman on guitar, who is the guitar player in this lineup. So this lineup here just morphed into this here without Pete Way. And so again, I just consider this to be another UFO album. And then most recently in 2024, Phil Mogg drops Mogg's Motel, which we have Neil Carter on guitar, who was a keyboard player for the group UFO back in the day. So we have 2 UFO guys here. And again, all of this just sounds like UFO. And if UFO was still out there making albums, this would be it, in my opinion. So I really kind of consider this to be maybe the final UFO album. Don't know if we're going to get another one. I think Phil Mogg is 77, maybe even older than that. He's up there in age. But this is some really, really great stuff. Go check out the song Apple Pie, which was the first single. Really, really good song. And so 46 albums for you guys. That is my CD collection of UFO. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Weigh in. Let me know what's your favorite UFO album, or maybe one of those Mogways or something like that. But lots and lots of great stuff to enjoy from Phil Mogg and UFO. All right, everyone. Take care. Have a good one, and I'll talk to you real soon. Bye-bye.